Ecto-1 isn't just a car, it's a paranormal superstar. That wailing siren, the roof rack packed with mystery gadgets, and the sheer size of the thing made it as iconic as the Ghostbusters themselves. Whether tearing through New York traffic or skidding to a halt outside the firehouse, it had style. But behind the cameras, the Ecto-1 has an even weirder story. From rust heaps to auction block millions, here are 20 bizarre, hilarious, and shocking facts about the Ghostbusters Ecto-1 that prove it's one of the most unforgettable movie vehicles ever. The car that became the Ecto-1 was a 1959 Cadillac Miller Meteor, a hybrid coach that served as both a hearse and an ambulance. Talk about fitting for a ghost movie. The car was huge, nearly 20 feet long, and already looked a little spooky thanks to its tail fins and chrome trim. When the Ghostbusters team got their hands on it, it was rusty and barely ran. The production crew bought it used for about $4,800, a bargain even then. The fact that the car had literally carried dead bodies before it carried proton packs gave it the perfect morbid vibe. Ironically, the Cadillac Miller Meteor was rare even in the 80s. Today, collectors drool over them. But thanks to Ghostbusters, one beat-up hearse-H ambulance earned eternal fame as the ghost hunting ride of choice. Believe it or not, the Ecto-1 we know and love wasn't the original design. Early drafts had the Ghostbusters driving a jet-black Cadillac hearse with purple strobe lights and even supernatural powers. Yes, the car itself was supposed to be haunted. The design team wanted it to glow with a ghostly aura and phase through traffic like an apparition. Cool on paper, impossible on a 1984 budget. Director Ivan Reitman decided it would be more fun if the Ghostbusters had a beat-up, modified junker instead of a magical Batmobile-style ride. So the team stripped back the supernatural features, painted it bright white, and loaded it with quirky roof gadgets. The result? A car that looked cobbled together by desperate ghost hunters instead of gifted by the supernatural. Honestly, it was the right call. The scrappy vibe fit the team perfectly. That bone-chilling woo-woo siren wasn't borrowed from a fire truck or ambulance. It was invented. Sound designer Richard Beggs created it by combining different alarms and warbles, then running them through synthesizers until it sounded otherworldly. It's so unique that no other vehicle in the world sounds like the Ecto-1. Over the years, fans have begged for replicas, and some car modders have even installed fake sirens in their own Ecto replicas. Illegally, of course. The sound is now so iconic that you could play it in a crowded street and instantly get 100 people yelling, "Who you gonna call?" The siren isn't just a sound effect, it's movie history. If you could steal one sound from movie history, would you pick the Ecto-1 siren, the TIE fighter scream, or the Batmobile's roar? Drop your pick in the comments and smash that like button. The original Ecto-1 looked great on camera, but under the hood, it was a disaster. The 1959 Cadillac had a massive 6.3-liter V8, but by the 1980s it was decades old, unreliable, and prone to overheating. During filming in New York, the car constantly broke down in traffic, much to the frustration of cast and crew. In some shots, when you see the Ghostbusters piling into the car or skidding around corners, the car was actually being pushed or towed by another vehicle just off-screen. Dan Aykroyd, a car nut himself, joked that Ecto-1 had more mechanics on set than actors. Despite its mechanical woes, the beat-up performance made it feel even more authentic, a scrappy ghost-chasing jalopy instead of a perfect Hollywood machine. Dan Aykroyd wasn't just Ray Stantz' goofy sidekick on screen, he's a hardcore car enthusiast in real life. He fell in love with the Ecto-1 the moment he saw it. In interviews, he said the car perfectly captured the spirit of the Ghostbusters, eccentric, over the top, and kind of falling apart. Aykroyd would often spend downtime on set tinkering with the Cadillac, chatting with mechanics, and even suggesting gadget placements on the roof. He once called it the fifth Ghostbuster. After filming Wrapped, Aykroyd admitted he tried to convince the studio to let him keep the car, but they refused. Years later, he helped restore one of the screen-used cars to its former glory. For him, it wasn't just a prop, it was a beloved piece of movie magic. Fans have argued for decades about what exactly was bolted onto the Ecto-1's roof. There's a ladder, sure, but what about the tubes, tanks, and spinning radar dish? The truth is, most of them don't have an explanation. The art department raided junkyards, science labs, and hardware stores, throwing together parts that looked vaguely technical. The goal wasn't function, it was chaos. They wanted the car to look like the Ghostbusters had built it themselves out of spare parts and questionable science. Fans later gave names to the items, like sniffer probes or muon scrubbers, but the crew admitted most of it was nonsense. That randomness is part of what made the Ecto-1 so believable. It looked cobbled together by eccentric scientists in a firehouse garage, not a sleek Hollywood designer. There wasn't just one Ecto-1 in 1984, there were two. One was the hero car, the detailed Cadillac with the full paint job, lights, and siren for close-up shots. The other was a rough stunt car, used for wider shots, background driving, and scenes that might damage the vehicle. Unfortunately, both cars were in bad shape mechanically, and neither survived filming in good condition. After production ended, one car was left rotting on a studio backlot, slowly rusting away, while the other was cannibalized for parts. Fans later rescued and restored them, turning what had once been junk into prized collector's items. It's crazy to think that at one point the studio nearly scrapped both cars completely, not realizing how legendary they would become. Part of the Ecto-1's magic isn't just the car, it's the firehouse it bursts out of. The exterior firehouse in New York, Hook and Ladder 8 in Tribeca, became just as iconic as the car itself. Seeing the white Cadillac shoot out of those big red doors made it feel like a superhero's entrance. Without that backdrop, the Ecto-1 might have just been another weird movie car. Today, fans still flock to the firehouse to snap pictures of the spot where the Ecto-1 lived. Firefighters stationed there even painted the Ghostbusters logo on the sidewalk for tourists. The building gave the Ecto-1 a home, making it feel like more than just transportation. It was the team's trusty steed. Believe it or not, the Ecto-1 nearly got cut. In early drafts, the Ghostbusters were supposed to ride around New York in a generic black station wagon because the Cadillac was too expensive and unreliable. The studio was worried the car would eat too much of the budget. Dan Aykroyd fought to keep it, arguing that Ghostbusters without a crazy car would feel incomplete. He won the battle, and the Ecto-1 rolled onto screens. Imagine Ghostbusters without that white Cadillac. It just wouldn't work. If Ghostbusters didn't have the Ecto-1, do you think the movie would still be iconic? Comment below and smash that like button if you agree the Ecto-1 is as important as the proton packs. Driving a 20-foot-long 1959 Cadillac through Manhattan was chaos. The car barely fit down narrow streets, and the turning radius was terrible. Add in flashing lights, a wailing siren, and cameras following behind, and you had instant gridlock. New Yorkers, never shy about honking, often swarmed the car, either furious at the traffic jam or thrilled to see the Ghostbusters driving past. Crew members said filming with the Ecto-1 often felt like managing a parade float in rush hour. To make matters worse, the car overheated constantly, forcing the crew to stop and cool it down between takes. For a car that's supposed to save New York from paranormal destruction, it barely survived a Tuesday on Broadway. By the time Ghostbusters Ecto-1 began filming in 1989, the original Ecto-1 was in rough shape. The production team had to rebuild and update it, giving us the sleeker Ecto-1A with more gadgets, flashing signs, and extra roof clutter. Underneath, though, it was still the same Cadillac, just patched up to limp through another movie. Mechanics recalled it barely held together, stalling constantly during shoots. The shiny new look made it seem like the Ghostbusters had upgraded their ride with new funding, but in truth, the real reason was that the old car was nearly dead. Fans still debate whether they prefer the scrappy Ecto-1 or the overloaded Ecto-1A, but both cemented the Cadillac as the ultimate paranormal cruiser. Honestly, the car deserves its own paycheck for surviving 2 films. After the movies wrapped, the Ecto-1 didn't get a museum spot. It was dumped on a Sony Pictures backlot, where it sat rotting for years under the California sun. Paint peeled, chrome rusted, tires deflated. The car that saved New York from Gozer was literally falling apart next to weeds and pigeons. Fans who spotted it on studio tours were heartbroken, snapping photos of the decayed legend. For a long time, it looked like Ecto-1 was destined for the junkyard. Luckily, passionate Ghostbusters fans and car experts petitioned for its restoration, and eventually, Sony gave the green light. What had been a rust bucket was rebuilt back into a cinematic superstar. Today, surviving screen-used Ecto-1s are priceless collectibles, but it's wild to think one of them was once treated like yesterday's trash. When Sony finally agreed to restore the Ecto-1, the job wasn't easy. The car was stripped down to bare metal, its frame rebuilt, and all the custom gadgets recreated. Fans, car builders, and even cast members pitched in to support the project. The restoration took years, costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. But when it finally re-debuted, the car looked like it had just rolled out of 1984 again. At events, Dan Aykroyd and Ernie Hudson proudly posed with the restored vehicle, treating it like a long-lost family member. Today, the Ecto-1 appears at premieres, conventions, and museum displays, drawing crowds of fans who line up just to take selfies with it. Few movie props have gotten this kind of treatment, proving the Ecto-1 isn't just a car, it's a Hollywood treasure worth saving. Because the original Cadillac Miller Meteor is so rare, fewer than 400 were ever built in 1959, fans around the world have made their own Ecto-1 replicas. Some use real Cadillacs, while others use different hearses or ambulances painted white with roof racks. At conventions and parades, you'll often see fan-made Ecto-1s complete with flashing lights and working sirens. Some are incredibly detailed, down to the last gadget, while others are hilariously budget-friendly versions made with PVC pipes and Christmas lights. The Ghostbusters fandom has kept the Ecto-1 alive far beyond the movies. In fact, fan replicas have even been used in commercials and events when the real cars weren't available. If you could build your own movie car, would you choose the Ecto-1, the DeLorean, or the Batmobile? Comment below and hit that like button if the Ecto-1 tops your list. At the Ghostbusters premiere in 1984, the Ecto-1 was supposed to roll up on the red carpet in front of fans and cameras. There was just one problem. The car wouldn't start. Mechanics frantically tinkered under the hood, while stars like Bill Murray and Sigourney Weaver were already posing for photos. After several embarrassing minutes, the engine finally roared to life, and the Cadillac pulled up looking like a champ. Of course, the audience never knew the panic happening just off screen. It was a perfect metaphor for the Ghostbusters themselves. A little messy, a little chaotic, but somehow it always came together at the last second. To this day, fans laugh about how the car almost ghosted its own premiere. One of the funniest truths about the Ecto-1 is that most of the equipment strapped to its roof didn't do anything at all. The art department scavenged junkyards, lab supplies, and old electronics, bolting random parts together until it looked like something vaguely scientific. There were radar dishes, tubing, and even old vacuum cleaner parts. None of it had a real purpose, but that's what made it believable. Ghostbusters was all about DIY science, so a car covered in cobbled-together gadgets looked exactly like something Egon and Ray would dream up. Fans later tried to catalog the functions of each item, giving them names like PKE antenna or muon scrubber. But the truth is, they were just creative junk. Sometimes movie magic is nothing more than a pile of spare parts and imagination. Cast and crew have admitted the Ecto-1 wasn't just unreliable, it was a beast to handle. At nearly 20 feet long and weighing over 2 tons, the Cadillac was difficult to steer, slow to brake, and impossible to park. In scenes where you see it drifting around corners or weaving through traffic, stunt drivers were working overtime to keep it from tipping over. Ernie Hudson, Winston, once joked that the car felt like driving a sofa strapped to a rocket. Dan Aykroyd, despite loving the car, admitted he never wanted to actually commute in it. As cool as it looked on screen, the Ecto-1 was better suited for busting ghosts than grocery runs. Honestly, can you imagine parallel parking that thing in Manhattan? Forget it. Believe it or not, the look of the Ecto-1 influenced some real-life emergency vehicles. After the movie's success, certain ambulance companies added more flashy lights and sirens to their rigs, hoping to capture a bit of the film's energy. Fans even reported spotting ambulances decked out in white paint with chrome trim that looked suspiciously like the Ecto-1. Of course, none had ghost detection gear on the roof, that we know of. But the Cadillac helped make ambulances look a little cooler in the 80s and 90s. The irony? The Ecto-1 was built from a car that actually was used as an ambulance back in the 50s. Art imitating life, then life imitating art. Ghostbusters blurred that line perfectly. The Ecto-1 isn't just a car, it's a brand. Since 1984, it has appeared as a toy, a Lego set, Hot Wheels models, posters, t-shirts, and even Halloween costumes. Fans can literally buy a miniature Ecto-1 that makes the siren sound. Lego released a massive detailed kit of the car in 2020, complete with sliding ghost trap doors and roof gadgets. The car's merch has become as profitable as the Ghostbusters themselves. For a vehicle that barely ran during filming, it's hilarious how well it sells in toy aisles. Kids who weren't even born when the original came out still recognize the Ecto-1 today. That's the definition of a pop culture icon. The Ecto-1 made its triumphant comeback in Ghostbusters Afterlife 2021. Restored and reimagined, the car was given new tricks, like a gunner seat that slides out the side so a Ghostbuster can blast ghosts on the move. This wasn't just a CGI trick. The filmmakers actually built working mechanics into the car to make it functional for stunts. Fans went wild seeing the Ecto-1 in action again, tearing through cornfields and city streets like it hadn't aged a day. After decades of rust and neglect, the Ecto-1 proved it could still carry the franchise on its massive chrome fins. For many fans, its return was as emotional as seeing the original cast again. It wasn't just a car, it was a memory brought back to life. Conclusion. And there you have it, 20 weird, wild, and wonderful facts about the Ghostbusters Ecto-1. From its humble start as a beat-up hearse ambulance to its rebirth in Afterlife, the car has been through nearly as much chaos as the Ghostbusters themselves. It's broken down, been abandoned, rebuilt, and merchandised to death. But through it all, it stayed unforgettable. The Ecto-1 isn't just a ride, it's part of the team, the fifth Ghostbuster. Whether you love it for the siren, the rooftop junk, or its sheer ridiculous size, one thing's for sure. No ghost movie car has ever done it better. So, what do you think? Is the Ecto-1 the greatest movie car ever? Or does something like the Batmobile or DeLorean take the crown? Drop your pick in the comments, smash that like button, and subscribe for more dives into cinema's most legendary rides.